upcoming guest is Elizabeth Miles. She's the founder of March 4th Media Company, and she just has a very special something. She's a magazine editor, a podcast host, an author, and like me, dog and cat lover. She's also a baker. I don't think I'm so good at that. She's a certified life coach and a Reiki master instructor. From being bullied in grade school, experiencing heartbreak, and overcoming a toxic and abusive relationship, Elizabeth knows firsthand what it's like to face adversity. Her experiences shaped her resilience, determination, and authenticity, and propelled her towards success. Since the very first launch of her business, Elizabeth has been passionate about empowerment and collaboration among the small business community. I think you're going to absolutely love this interview. We'll be covering a lot and jumping here and there to talk about things that I know you're going to find useful. So be sure and join me, won't you? My mission to end the silence, the stigma, and the shame about suicide loss, ideation, and mental health. Please, won't you join me?
Suicide Zen Forgiveness, the pod that shares the stories of those affected by suicide. Lost a loved one? Attempted it yourself? Come listen in with your host, Elaine Lindsay. Please note, the Suicide Zen Forgiveness podcast is for education only. Some of this subject matter could be triggering. For those of you that are either grieving or having mental health problems, please call your local suicide hotline or mental health office if you need immediate help. And now, here's your host, Elaine Lindsay.
It's so good to be back, and today I have with me a very special guest, also a podcaster. She is also a magazine editor. She is, of course, one of my favorite kind of people. She's a dog and a cat lover. She's also, you're a baker and an author. And you are a certified life coach. You have your Reiki master instructor certificates, which I think is very cool. Elizabeth Miles.
Hello. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so glad to get to welcome you on my podcast. I must say, I was on your podcast, and you're a great interviewer. I thoroughly enjoyed my time with you. So I'm hoping I do at least half as good a job.
I'm sure you will.
Here on Suicide Zen Forgiveness, we share the stories of our guests, and our ultimate goal is to leave the audience with a little hope. I don't like to step in until I know a little bit, and I'm always happiest when I don't know too much about your story going in, because I find it's really cool to be part of the audience and learn about your story with them. So I think that makes our feelings and things a little more genuine and heartfelt. With that said, Elizabeth, I am going to let you start wherever you want to. Life is not linear, so we don't have to be. Let's just listen to your story.
I appreciate it. Wow. So where to even begin? I guess in the realm of mental health, first became aware of having, or even what mental health was, when I was probably 16. I struggled with eating disorders, like binge eating, bulimia, struggled with my weight, and then I hit a point where I just felt bad, awful. I had some endocrine issues. I was not treated properly because I was a kid, and kids who have stomach issues are just trying to get out of school, and they didn't want to listen when I told them how much pain I was in, and I had surgery when I was 13 because of that, and up and down hormone fluctuations came. And then at 16 is really when I started to really be aware of depression and that was my first real point where I felt hopeless and scared and alone, and I ended up trying to take my life. I fortunately did not do it in a way that was even close to potentially successful, but I felt just so bad about me, my life, where I was, how I looked, how I was showing up, how, like, friendship situations. I felt very awkward, which, looking back now, all 16-year-olds feel awkward. That's just the stage. But when you're going through it,
you think you're the only one.
And from there, I guess probably the next point was when I was a freshman in college. I commuted my first semester. Started to work as soon as I graduated high school. I graduated, and 2 weeks later I had a job. Was working full-time over the summer. Got to college, commuted, hated it because the school, when you're commuting at that point, the school I was attending was not a very commuter-friendly place. And so making friends was a challenge for me. And again, finding myself by the second term feeling like I didn't fit in, that there wasn't a place for me. And so I found myself again back in therapy, not a suicide attempt at that point, but still ended up taking a leave for the semester because I just was struggling so bad. I was keeping up with the schoolwork, but I was losing motivation, and I was really not doing well mentally. And then from there, I graduated college, put my head down and plowed through, graduated in 3 years instead of 4, got married, had kids, and in and out of therapy left and right throughout my kids' childhood. Ended up in 2009 again having an emotional breakdown, and was inpatient for mental health again for about 7 to 10 days, feeling very much alone, hopeless. I was in a very bad abusive marriage, and having 4 kids under the age of 10, all of them, they were very close together. I didn't really know what I was supposed to do. I didn't know what I should do. I didn't feel like I had an outlet. I was going to therapy. There wasn't a person who was telling me it's okay if you want to leave. Even couples counselors weren't saying this isn't normal, his actions aren't okay, there's another option. And I don't know, it's not really fair to make it sound like I'm putting it on them, but I felt at the time that I needed someone to say it's okay to go. I didn't see any other possibilities for myself. And so again, probably 4 years after that, I was back on the verge of a mental breakdown and doing outpatient, like a partial program to try to get myself back on track. And from there, luckily, it's been an uphill, downhill, not linear, but much more aware of triggers and situations that I know when it's time to push pause. But it's just a call out to, there's still so much work to do for mental health awareness, suicide prevention, for helping people. We have so much research, and we've come a long way, but there's still also a long way to go.
Because there is still silence, stigma, and shame surrounding all of it. That, to me, is the biggest part of why we have not advanced anymore. There have been advancements, I would say, in the last 10 years. We are seeing more, and millennials and Gen Z and now Gen Alpha are much more likely to ask for help or to acknowledge that something is not right. Because back in my day, you did not say anything. You didn't even talk to your family. That was absolutely taboo. And we have come some way from there, but part of the reason I do the podcast is because we've got a long way to go.
And it's interesting, right? I'm glad you mentioned that, because I remember with my parents, with my eating disorders, they didn't have conversations with me. They took me to the doctor, who was not a mental health clinician and had no idea what to even do. They were doing the best they could, right? They did what they thought was best, but
Absolutely.
my family doctor did not have any clue. I was a 16-year-old girl. What do you say? Of course she's going to have eating issues. She's going to be body conscious. But they didn't know what to do.
No, and the fact is that parents, up until recently, you deferred to the doctor. What the doctor said was law until if someone in your family ran into issues and you saw behind the curtain and realized doctors were just as human as anybody else. For the most part, people were, it's like doctors, lawyers, they know their stuff, and we're just supposed to take a back seat and do as we're told. So that's also part of the thing. Kids don't come with manuals. And those people, those people with authority, they have, or they had, more rights invested in them, rightly or wrongly. But I want to stop you and say one thing. Through all that, you raised 4 children. Brava. That is, to me, incredible. That you knew enough to get help so that you could be there for your children. And the fact that your children are around today living productive lives means that you were not totally selfish. You were not so lost in your depression or your eating disorders or anything to not consider your kids. And that's a really important piece for you to always keep that you did all
Thank
that.
you. I appreciate that. It's interesting because I remember at the time thinking they would be better off. But then there was always a point that I got to where I would think to myself, but if it's not me with them, it will be him. And knowing what was going on in my relationship with him and how that was impacting them, that was scary to think about.
Yeah.
And I couldn't let that happen.
And that's a very good thing. And you're at a point now that you left
Yes. Yep.
the marriage.
2019. So after almost 20 years of the universe trying to tell me to go and me resisting like crazy, we were at a campsite and I literally heard a voice that said, "This is where you pivot." I didn't know what it meant, but I knew I needed to pay attention. And the next day I was hiking this mountain with my ex-husband, scared out of my mind, and talking myself out of all the reasons to be enjoying myself. It was, you're too fat, you're too unhealthy, you're too this, you're too that, you're too blank. And because of that, it was playing directly into the fear of this experience. It was a very narrow path. It wasn't paved. It was very steep. It was very challenging. There was no side railing. There were all these other literal signs that said people have been known to die, hike at your own risk. Within a year after we were on that hike, it was closed because of the number of injuries and deaths that had been sustained.
Oh my God.
I didn't plan this hike. He did. But in the process of me going through this, I came to a realization of what "this is where you pivot" meant at the time, and that was I could talk myself out of the fear that I was in. And that totally changed my experience. I kept hearing, "This is where you pivot, this is where you pivot." And I recognized that it was telling me, change your focus, look at something else. Think of the breeze, the sound of the trees, think of the fresh air, the sound of the stream, the waterfall that's up ahead. Be present in this moment instead of the I should or should not do, or oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And once I started to do that, I was able to get back in control of the situation. It's not that the fear wasn't there, but I was able to still walk through this experience calmly, peacefully, and enjoy the situation. Within 6 months, I had kicked him out, filed for a protection from abuse order, and he was gone. After almost 20 years of me not being able to get out.
Wow.
Because I realized that while I didn't know what was on the other side of him leaving and it ending, it had to be better than what I was going through. And if I just focused on what is the next step, I didn't have to have everything figured out. Because for years I was worried, what about the kids? If I leave, what am I going to do? How am I going to pay the bills? How am I going to... There were so many things that I didn't have answers to that I thought I needed to get figured out. And when I realized I just have to take one next step, and then once I get to that point, I can pivot again and do the next step, everything changed.
Was there something prior to the trip, the camping trip, that, I don't know, hinted at changes for you? Or was there an underlying excitement or curiosity?
It's interesting. As I look back, I knew the signs were there. I knew the universe was saying go. I knew that. And I always knew intuitively when something bad was going to happen. I could say probably right after the trip, I met a woman who was a counselor who helped women in these similar situations, and also was a counselor for police officers. And my ex had been a police officer, so she was able to talk to some of the mindset, and she was a huge help. But I met her probably 2 weeks after. There was a book that I found at the library. It literally fell off the shelf in front of me. And it was a book of abusive relationships and toxic relationships and the dynamic and how situations would play out in these relationships. And I knew it was meant for me. I picked it up and I sat down and started to read it, and it was literally like a script from my life. And that was a huge sign of, you need to wake up. I remember driving home from the library that night crying. I still don't know what to do. And I just needed to take one step.
That is so huge, because there are so many who don't get that opportunity, and so many that it's offered over and over again by the universe, and yet they can't see it. I'm cheering the part of you that was looking for a solution, because it's in that curiosity that you were able to be open to what was offered.
That's why you and I are here. Because I teach the power to pivot. That's the mission. That's everything that I do, is that power to pivot. And I'm here to encourage and champion people to wake up and see the possibility. If you're here and alive on the planet right now, you're never stuck, you're never lost, and you're never alone. I completely 100% understand that when you're in the thick of it, it is really challenging to see that. But those are the moments when you reach out to a pastor, to a friend, to a coach, to a counselor, to a doctor, to just social media. The hardest words that anybody will ever say are, I need help, because we want people to and I did this too. I wanted people to think I was okay. And I put on this shell, this mask for years, because I didn't want people to see the inside and how bad it really felt, the situation that I was going through. People could see it though. I didn't know what they knew or what they saw until well after. But people still knew. but 3 words, I need help. Put it out on, find a group. There's a group on social media, I can almost guarantee you.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And it's funny, bizarre, not funny, amusing that we are the last to actually lift the veil, because others, they do twig to what's going on. Maybe not fully, but other people do know that something's just not right.
And it's okay. I want
Yeah.
people, and hope more people understand that every one of us goes through seasons. Not a single person on this planet will ever say every day of my life is perfect and wonderful and beautiful. We all go through seasons, days, bad weeks, bad months, 20 years of a bad relationship, right? Like, it happens, and that's part of the human experience. It is one of the things that brings us all together, because we all have those powerful emotions of fear and sadness and despair and grief. And when this is the other extension of the Power to Pivot and March 4th Media, but we get further together, and when we come together, it's through the power of the story. We heal through podcasts like this, through articles, books, stories. When people share their experience, we recognize that we are not that much different than the experiences you shared on my podcast. Could very much relate. And I'm always amazed when people come on to the Power to Pivot podcast, just how similar, even though we're from different backgrounds, sometimes different parts of the world.
Yeah.
When we start to share our stories, that's when we come together. And that's why shows like this are important, because it gives that hope and helps people see that we're not alone.
It's so true. And said on your show, I say it all the time, it took me 40 years to get it together. But once you break down those barriers, and very often we are protecting everyone else from us. It doesn't matter if it's addiction or pain or an abuser or what. We're not protecting others from that. We're protecting them from us, because we feel in our damaged state that we are the worst thing. And that's very sad. But when you start breaking that down and allowing people to see your truth, not what they've seen, but coming from you, it changes the dynamic. It makes you more human, for one. And I immediately knew in 2013, the first time I opened up about anything, it was a burden was lifted. There was a big weight. It was like, I can exhale, like for the first time in 40 odd years. So that, giving that to others, allowing others to feel that on our podcasts is part of why we do this. Because just in seeing someone be able to take that deep breath can be hope for somebody else.
We are each other's enemies and best friends at the same time as a human species, right? And that is what makes it so challenging and plays into the stigma, because people will be your best friend but can also be the most judgmental, which is why it's really important to remember. And this was something that I struggled with. Not even family, right? The word family is a label. And there will be potentially family members in your life that don't understand because of where they are in their life and their cycle and their emotions and their awareness. And maybe they never will come around, but it's okay to let them go and set that boundary so that you can find someone who can be there to support you. When it's like that saying, when one door opens, another door closes. If you let that person go, someone else will come in.
You will, and those people I call my heart.
Yes.
because that's what they are for me. Our family is very small. The last couple of years got a lot smaller. There's just the little core, and we have lots of heart family around us that we've adopted and they've adopted us, and it's when you become open to others, when you allow your light to shine rather than cover yourself in darkness, it's amazing how many people will get on board.
Yeah, and that's powerful. And this is another piece of the puzzle too, like just helping more people understand that the heart family and that concept.
Yeah.
We don't have to live with labels. Everything is in a silo, and it bugs me. There's a label for everything: rich, poor, black, white, family,
polka dot,
light, even light, dark. But we're all part of the same planet. We're all part of the human species. Yeah. We all deserve respect and love.
Absolutely. Humans, sadly, by nature, we are comparative because it's the only way we can understand. You can't know short unless tall. You can't know cold unless hot. So in that comparison, like everything else, we've taken it to the nth degree, which isn't necessarily a good thing, but it is where free will comes in. What makes us different from the other animals is being able to articulate those differences, that comparison.
I just wish that more people would be curious about the differences and not... Because when we sit at the table together, two different people from completely different backgrounds, and sit at the table together with a sense of curiosity and not hate or judgment, we can completely change the face of the way the world works. If we recognize that judgment comes from fear. I'm afraid of what that other person may have. There's that safety mechanism that is in all of us, but it doesn't have to be. We can choose how we show up in that.
And I've often said, okay, everybody, in that fear thinks they want everyone to be the same and everything to be the same. Snooze. No, you don't. No, you don't.
If everything was purple in the world,
you would die of boredom. Oh my God. And some of us would die faster because I don't like being bored. But having, I don't know, some of us are born with an innate curiosity. I want to know everything. I want to know everything, learn everything, talk to everybody. And in fact, this morning at the grocery store, I walk around this world. My husband will tell you it doesn't matter whether I'm on a beach in the Caribbean or I'm on my own street. If somebody walks by me, doesn't matter if they have earphones, they're on a bicycle, whatever, I will say hello. It's just who I am. And this morning, a woman said hello to me first.
That's rare.
So it was such a nice start to the day. It's happened a lot of times, but it was just really, so nice. So nice. I'm not the only one doing this. Sometimes it's a nice confirmation to know that there are others that are as open. But it's a curiosity and wanting to learn. What are those differences, or what makes those differences unique? To me, that's interesting. That's what makes life exciting, is being able to talk about things that are different, not just purple.
Yep. I've always loved different cultures and learning about different cultures, and food is my big thing, right? Like, I'm fascinated by how food impacts culture and, what that means in different cultures and just how it's treated and prepared, and could go on and on. But it's always been fascinating to me how other cultures live, and I hope, and we talked about mental health and youth, I think, on my show a little bit, but as we continue on down the line, making sure that we're instilling that sense of open-mindedness and curiosity with our children, in a way that is safe. And I say that because of the internet. Like, the internet can be a very scary place, and there needs to be those conversations about being reserved about it and doing it in a very smart way. But I think there's a lot of fear because of this technology that is so great and helps us connect, but at the same time there are those that are using it in a very harsh and unsafe and not good way, which is impacting our kids, and that's causing fear to be open-minded. And
the unfortunate thing is there have always been that element. They just have more tools today
True.
to be horrible than they did many years ago. But where you are fascinated with food, I am fascinated with clothing and jewelry and what is a culture's particular dress and what certain things mean. That just absolutely fascinates me. I'm very tactile, so I like to feel fabric and texture and all of that. So somewhat akin to your learning about the food. For me, it's learning about everything people wear and what matters within that realm. We had a geography teacher in grade 9, and she was an ex-nun, and she had us, we didn't quite understand it, but for geography we colored the edges of the oceans and made all the countries different colors. Many of us in class thought it was crazy, but I will tell you, at the ripe old age of 68, I can still tell you where those countries are. Now, a lot of them are no longer those countries, so some things have changed, but there was method in her madness.
Yeah. We need teachers like that.
So if you could wave a magic wand, and the one thing you want to change for humanity, what is it?
Oh, I would love for people... Oh, it's a tie, actually. Can it be a tie?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the first is what I've already said. I wish that there could be these groups that have been at odds for hundreds of years, waking up and recognizing that it's judgment from fear that is causing this discontent, and sit at the table together and talk it out. Come together, understand each other's differences, come from a place of understanding and not judgment and hate. And I think that when we start asking new and different questions in the world, that is when we will start to see some of these real changes. And that's probably the one main thing. But then I want people to also just recognize that they have a choice. They don't have to stay in this feeling of being stuck. They don't have to stay in a feeling of being lost. We have more power within us than we give ourselves credit for. And whether it's someone going through a mental health crisis or a bad marriage or a bad career or bulimia, like, you can get yourself out. I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying go alone to do it. You don't have to go through it alone. But you can do it. You are more powerful than you think you are. And my hope and wish is that people start to realize that. I think about politics as an example, and how we all know the corruption that exists there, but there's this feeling of disempowerment as a society. This is the way it is. We can't change it. No. If enough of us said enough is enough, and I'm not trying to cause a revolt here. Let's do it the right way. But if we don't have to settle, just because that's the way it's always been, we all have a voice, and we all have the ability to come together and create the change. We just have to remember that we are stronger together in numbers, and when we do it with love and for the right reasons, we can get where we want to go without causing mass catastrophe. It doesn't have to be that way.
I think that's such a good point, and something that I think is wonderful, that on that mountain feeling all that danger around you, you harnessed fear to work for you. And I think that's one of the most important things we have to learn, is that fear can be a really good tool.
Mm-hmm.
Just as anger, okay? Our emotions are neither good nor bad, but all emotions are meant to flow and go. They are not meant to be held
Yes.
on. And for me, that's, you got to that point where you understood intrinsically to harness the fear, and you said, in your words, you got to a place where you were peaceful and you could enjoy around you. And I just think that's amazing. Like, what an incredible lesson for you to offer others.
Everybody can do it. And the interesting thing is that the truth is, fear will never go away.
No.
Everything is a lesson. And the more you heal, the more you grow, you're going to get more lessons. There's going to be more fear. Every time you level up, quote unquote, there's going to be more fear. It's just about understanding how it shows up for you and having that awareness so you can navigate and dance with it. I say dance through fear, right? Dance with fear.
I like
because that's really what you're doing. You're navigating through life with fear. You want to be in the driver's seat and fear in the back seat, trying to tell you, are we there yet? Can we stop here? I got to go to the bathroom. Like a little kid.
Yeah. Or me.
But it doesn't, you're in the driver's seat of your life.
The biggest problem we have, and my spiritual advisors taught us this years ago, you are in the driver's seat, but you're not always paying attention. When you allow your inner child or whatever to take over, then your life is happening around you. It's not happening to you. And the best life is a life that you participate in. And that is absolutely a choice.
100%.
I have some choosing to do. Because, there are certain things, like probably you as well, there are certain things we are afraid of that it's not easy necessarily to get over. But we can work ourselves up to doing it and making that choice. You see it all the time.
Absolutely. You don't have to have it all figured out. Even just making the choice that you want to is a pivot. That opens the door for a lot more possibility to happen. I don't know how this is going to happen, but this is what I choose. I choose to forgive that person. And it's not necessarily an immediate thing, but just by saying, I'm going to choose this because it's better for me, you're opening possibilities up for your life that weren't there before.
Absolutely. Excuse me. And that is such a healthier way to be. You find when you start making those choices, there are more of them. And it becomes exciting to make more of those kinds of choices and get to live more fully.
And it was difficult for me for a long time because I thought I needed everyone's permission. And I thought that I was needing to live by the rules that I thought I needed to live by. Even in my early 20s, I remember thinking I had a husband, I had a kid, I had a job. I thought I was doing adulthood very well because that's what I thought it meant. Not realizing that I could set my own rule book. I could be my own person. And once I wrestled my way to the realization of, wait, I can make my own choices? What? I don't need anybody else's permission? What?
Yeah.
It got a lot more fun.
Oh, yeah. And On that point, I think we need to teach about thoughts and feelings to children. I originally thought it was about teaching children to understand that thoughts are not always real, they are not always true, and they're not necessarily meant to be acted on. But I spoke with a gentleman who, the podcast went live on Tuesday. He's scientific and brilliant, and he said, no, he said, it's not the thought that's so important. It's the feeling that comes from the thought. Those are what drive us. And those are the things that we have no idea about. And it's absolutely true. The little movie that came out about the feelings, this is a step in the right direction, absolutely. But I think it would be better to teach kids in school how to deal with feelings and emotions, how to manage the difficult ones, and how to also manage the really good ones. Because we can get hooked on the dopamine of always feeling really good, and that isn't necessarily going to lead you to a full life.
Yep. Actually, the opposite is true too. You can get hooked on that feeling of feeling bad. Sounds crazy to say, but it's true. It could go either way. It's interesting how our brain works.
Yeah. And if that, you would understand this coming from a domestic abuse situation, if that is your comfort zone, that is what you'll seek. And the comfort of discomfort is better than the feelings that we don't know and don't know what to do with.
But I promise you, there's a whole spectrum of them out there. And it's so much fun when you dive in and start to understand that there is more good and like the positive and the negative, right? Like it's not just fear and anger and sadness. Like there's dimensions of each one, and it can get challenging at first to be able to identify and pinpoint where you are on that spectrum, but there's more to it. You can get really specific about what it is you're feeling, and when you understand that, it becomes a lot easier to navigate your way out, because it's not just I'm sad and I don't know why. I'm feeling grief, or I'm feeling hopeless, or I'm feeling amazing. I'm feeling joyful, hopeful, successful. They're all part of those similar emotions.
Yeah. And anger is actually an incredibly useful emotion when it's self-directed. If as a child you get angry at yourself for not doing well on a test, you can choose to not take any more tests or to just slough them off, or you can choose to use that anger to fuel you to learn more, so the next test you ace.
Absolutely.
And that's the things that we need to teach, that all of the feelings, they're for you to utilize to live your best life.
I fear that one thing that I worry about with that is how COVID impacted that, because there's a whole group of kids who just were isolated, and yes, we had Zoom and Zoom teaching. It was not the same as being able to go to soccer practice and be with your friends on a weekly basis or a couple times a week, or sit in a classroom with your peers at recess. And
one thing that's
sorry
to interrupt you. One thing that's even scarier about COVID, the children that were born after the beginning of 2020, for the first 2 years of their life, they never saw a stranger smile.
Oh, that's interesting. That never occurred to me.
That has been driving me crazy since 2020, because that's how you come to trust other humans. That's how you come to know that love comes in all different forms, and that people can be good, and that other people look for fun and are happy and like things, and it's all those things that this group of children have missed. And for the first few months, that kept me up, because I kept thinking how long this goes on is going to impact so many little kids. And it's hard, because big humans are scary. Just on a good day. Imagine if you've never seen anything but eyes. And you can smile with your eyes, but not in the same way. It doesn't give them that understanding at all of what that really is, which I just think is so sad.
Agreed.
It's very sad. I want to keep an eye on the stats and see what happens with these, I guess they're the alpha children, which come after Gen Z. But it'd be interesting for researchers to do a study and perhaps have schools and step in and spend a little time dealing with other humans and how you interact with humans. Something we've never talked about in school. I never got that in school.
No, it'll be interesting for sure. I hope we get on top of it before it's too late. I worry because, especially in the States, there's the focus on the math and science, and the arts are getting cut. And I actually just worry in general with technology. I was already very much concerned about the use of technology in schools. And while technology is great, there is the mind-body connection and the muscle memory of learning penmanship, and it goes into brain development. And now that's not happening because we have all these tablets and devices and computers and cell phones, and it's a basic part of our development that's lost from very early on.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's put an immediacy on answers that don't come from within. So there's very little thinking involved. Now, I will say, and I'm a little bit happy, my 7-year-old grandson, early this year, they have started in his class learning cursive writing. And this is all new, and he was really quite shocked to hear that Grandma actually does cursive writing.
You're a cool kid.
He seemed to think it was something new.
You know that?
Yeah. And I write with a fountain pen. And he just finds that absolutely fascinating.
Awesome.
Wow.
You're the cool kid, Grandma.
You have to put ink in your pen. Yeah. But it's... my brain works in weird ways, because that was not something anybody else seemed to think about, was being smiled at. There are just little things that you think, oh, that's so sad that they missed out. Mm-hmm. And we've had difficult times all over, and I know for a fact in China, since the SARS epidemic, there are multitudes in China that wear masks all the time, and have since then. They have handled it in their way. But I think it would be really interesting for researchers to take a look at what is that, either is there a detriment here that needs to be addressed, or is it something that can be overcome over time? Or are we going to bring up even more fearful and less trusting little humans? So it's
we'll
just
see.
One more thing to think about.
20 years, we'll know.
Yeah, we'll come back in 20 years and we'll
I'm
figure
setting
out
my clock.
Okay, perfect. We'll put that on the calendar. Although we probably will be coming back in a different format in 20 years.
We'll be holograms or something.
We'll probably... yeah, that's what I was going to say. It'll probably be holograms, and we'll just have to pop a button on our sleeve or something to head into our meeting. Hologram, head into
like
the
a
meeting.
beam me up Scotty. I don't know.
Yeah,
It'd
I
be
like that.
interesting.
It absolutely will. And it's like anything else. Technology, there's good and there's bad to it. Uh, we've had conversations about AI, and a lot of people, oh my God, AI is going to take over the world. AI may have a bit of a bias because it has to be programmed by humans. At the worst, it will be biased, and already we are seeing that. If you use any of the imaging with AI and you look for group imaging, you are going to get a preponderance of male images. It's for how many years the bulk of the programmers are men. So that kind of makes sense. But if you look at that over time, the more we diversify the programmers that we have and those that are inputting to AI, the more likely we are going to get a more balanced group of responses.
Yes.
And I see that being part of therapy and handling loneliness and different things down the road, because people who live alone do better if they have a cat or a dog or a budgie or whatever. And I think the same will apply with some sort of AI that allows you to converse. Because that's, I think, a big part of it for humans. When you're alone, it's the silence that's deafening.
Oh, for sure.
So what's next for you?
I don't know. I have lots of things on my bucket list. Right now, we are focused on the magazine. It's a quarterly digital magazine, so that will continue on. I am working with a nonprofit, actually two nonprofits. One is to help build housing for women and families that are going through abusive situations and need to get to safety.
Perfect.
More details on
Yeah.
that to come. And then another nonprofit is actually just a local nonprofit outside of the Scranton area to clean up some of the neighborhoods in one of the smaller towns that's very underfunded. And there's more issues there, but that's more of an offline conversation. But yeah, it's a very underfunded town and desperately in need of some beautification and some programs. So working with them. And March 4th Media is just going to keep trucking ahead, trying to share stories and help other people come together and be nice to each other.
I absolutely love that. I think that is absolutely wonderful, and I cannot applaud what you do enough.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Because I think it's critically important.
The same for you. We need this program, this podcast to continue on because, one, you're a great host, so thank you.
Oh,
but
thank you.
We really do need to break the stigma and the shame and the silence around mental health, and we don't have to be embarrassed anymore about our feelings, our thoughts, and I hope more people recognize that. You're never alone, right? You can reach out.
Oh, thank you. That's perfectly said. And it's so incredibly important that we do make a point of realizing connections are critically important. Reach out to someone. Doesn't matter who. Could be a neighbor, could be the guy at the, I'm going to say 7-Eleven. I don't know if they have those.
I think they do.
Yeah, maybe still, or what is it? They used to have in the Piggly Wiggly.
Oh, I think that
or is
still
that a
exists. I
grocery
think
store?
it's a grocery store.
Oh.
But either way.
Yeah, that's what you get for getting, I used to get American television when I was a kid up in Toronto. We got the Buffalo station, and I know there was Piggly Wiggly there. All of that to say, I thank you so much, Elizabeth, for joining us today. My guest, Elizabeth Miles. We will have all of her information everything and every way to reach her, and her book and her site and her podcast and the magazine, and we'll have all that available for you. Don't forget to subscribe to us down below. I'm Elaine Lindsay. This is Suicide Zen Forgiveness. Until next time, make the very best of your today, every day, and we'll be seeing you. Bye for now.
Thank you for being here for another inspiring episode of Suicide Zen Forgiveness. We appreciate you tuning in. Please subscribe and download on your favorite service and check out SZF's YouTube channel or Facebook community. If you have the chance to leave a 5-star rating or review, it'd be greatly appreciated. Please refer this to a friend you know who may benefit from the hope and inspiration from our guests. Suicide Zen Forgiveness was brought to you by the following sponsors. Truel Social Media, the digital integration specialists. Let them get you rocking page 1 in the search results. Canada's keynote humorist Judy Croon, motivational speaker, comedian, author, and stand-up coach at Second City, Judy has been involved for over a decade in the City Street Outreach Program in Toronto. Lisa Sugarman, Boston-based author, columnist, and crisis counselor with the Trevor Project, America's largest suicide and crisis support network for at-risk LGBTQ+ youth, storyteller with the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI, survivor of suicide loss, and mental health advocate. Lisa's purpose aligns with Elaine's as Lisa shares content and sparks conversations to help end the stigma of suicide and connect people with the support and hope they deserve. Do you have a story to share? Do you know someone you think would be a great guest? Please go to szf42.com. And for our American listeners, that's szf42.com. Thank you for listening, and we hope to see you again.